maybe that's the direction of travel we've always seen, John, in terms of industrial revolution. Whereas instead of doing all the minor stuff, it goes up to the higher level where we can control the mass production of it. Where that's scary is sort of course, well, I don't know how that affects copywriters and how it affects a certain class of jobs.
Let's go. All right, everybody, welcome back to the pubcast. I am psyched to welcome Joel Hughes to the show today. Joel is a friend of mine. He's also a team member. He is the founder of Glass Mountains, which is a web support agency with clients in the UK and the US, and I am one of those clients. Don't know what I'd do without you. How you doing, Joel?
I am good. I'm glad it's Friday. Yeah. And we love working with you, John. So thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah. I mean, how many years has it been now?
See, don't ask me that because I'm terrible. My brother has got one of those memories who can say exactly what happened and what year and that stuff. If I say, oh, it was probably 5 years, it's probably 7 or 8. So I'm terrible with that kind of thing. I know we've worked together for a good few years now, that's for sure.
The funny thing is, like, from my childhood, I can remember specifically what year certain things happened, whether it's movies or sports events, things like that, because of the songs that were out and the grade that I was in, right? So you had those things to kind of set a benchmark. Those things don't really exist for me now because I listen to all old music. And I guess I'm in like the 50th grade or something. I don't know what grade that would be, 40th grade or something of school.
Yeah, I think that music in the charts was a very good way marker. Again, my brother would be fantastic at saying what year and what month and all that stuff is. And he'll just get annoyed with me when he'll ask me when was this song released and stuff like that. But I'm terrible with that. But it's funny nowadays you don't have those waypointers. However, I would say my 16-year-old daughter was asking me yesterday, Dad, have you got an LP player? You know, the vinyl player. So I found she bought some CDs. Yeah. I mean, remember these
CDs?
things? She bought some CDs of a band she liked, and it was specifically because she did actually want something tangible. So. We talk about the younger generation and that, but I mean, some of these formats maybe still got a bit of a liking now.
I wasn't planning on going this direction, but I know you're also a music buff and you play the guitar. You do a lot of guitar stuff for TikTok, which is pretty cool. Check that out. But now that you bring up like the CDs, so I've been like selling old crap that I've kept in storage forever because I just realized like people buy stuff like on Facebook Marketplace, and one of the things I sold was my beloved minidisc player.
Oh, I used to have one of those.
Yeah, it was a minidisc player recorder. So that's what came after CDs. Never really caught on. Always felt like it was going to be the next big thing because it's smaller. You can record on it.
You can record, yeah.
And it is something tangible. And so I kind of was a little sad to see that go, but that was one of my favorite things back in the day.
I had the first Sony minidisc Walkman, and I thought I was a kiddie with that, John. I absolutely loved that.
Awesome.
But you're right. It was a lovely format. That was a great little format. That was.
Yeah. So we're going to have a true pubcast today, Joel. What are you drinking?
This is Corona beer. This is. I quite like that one. Yeah.
Okay.
I could have it in the can, but I'm a glass person. I like a glass.
Oh no, yeah, no, I'm going to the glass too. I probably should have looked at what this was before I started pouring, and it's a really bad. This is like historically bad. Like every time I do this on the show, it's a bad. It might have something to do with the fact that this beer has been sitting in my fridge for a while, but then you'd expect it to be flat.
I'm terrible at pouring. I'm terrible at it. Even though I know you're meant to tip it, but even when I do that, it just doesn't work.
The tipping doesn't work for me. I'm drinking a Manic Confidence, and truthfully, when I first got this out, I was like, Confide and
yeah, it looks like it.
I thought that's what it was. It's Manic Confidence.
And what's that, like an IPA or something like that?
It is. It's a hazy enough IPA. Yeah. So I'll try to drink through the foam. Cheers to you.
Cheers, John. Yeah.
Glug, glug, glug.
the work that you do with me, I mean, it's all web related stuff, and I mean, I'll try not to leave anything out here, but it's web design, it's A/B testing, it's building pages, it's analytics, Google Analytics stuff, pixel related stuff as well. When I don't know how to do it, anything I'm missing there that, or maybe other things that you guys do that you just don't do for me.
No, well, I mean, obviously, this we look at the performance. We look at what's coming down the line in terms of, like, sometimes hosting might come up with a new facility. Like, it doesn't apply to you, John, but like Cloudways announced today another way of updating plugins. So we need to be on the ball with watching things like that. And of course, the website quickly goes onto other applications like with Keep and Infusionsoft. So there's a level of integration there that we need to know about. There's, you know, I mean, it's anything to do with the website and how the website interacts with the outside world, really, because it's not an island, of course. And then, of course, there's facilities which wrap around the website, which is Cloudflare, which I think we chatted about earlier, which I've been a great advocate for that for years. So that is a great service. That is.
What is it you like about it?
Initially, it's the simplicity. So obviously the web works in the sense that if you want to go to a website, sort of bananas.com, why have I got the bananas again? Bananas.com. Right? So when you type that into your browser, the browser itself has got to translate bananas.com into an IP address because it doesn't understand what domain names are. So if you get it set up correctly, the thing that translates that bananas into an IP could be Cloudflare. And the benefit of that then is that the requests go through Cloudflare, which means that it can do things like it can speed up things. But specifically for WordPress, because there are certain attack patterns for WordPress sites, Cloudflare can protect your WordPress site without you messing around, without doing anything on the WordPress site itself, without doing anything on your hosting, because you wrap it around this shell, you already can get protection from it. And that's just one thing that they do, John, because of course they got WordPress specific optimization and so many other services. We've talked about one before, which is Zaraz, which is a very funky thing. But
we should mention that briefly because it's relevant to a lot of people listening who especially listen for Facebook ad stuff. I mean, that is one of the options out there. If you use Cloudflare for the Pixel and API, that's just built in through Cloudflare, right? No extra charge for it.
Oh, completely. Yeah, I'm sure that it was in beta, and I mean, Cloudflare is always very affordable. So I think unless you've got a huge number of visitors, man, it's not going to be a problem. But yeah, so with Zaraz, you can just go there and you can set up your pixels or your Google Analytics or whatever pixels or scripts you want to embed, and you do that within the Cloudflare interface. And again, because Cloudflare is seeing the requests first, because it wraps around your website, it can embed those scripts in. And I love that because the less mucking around with your website, the less people who look after a website have got to they've either got to embed the script or they've got to use a plugin. The simpler we can get that, the more manageable the website is. And of course, you can put rules in and stuff. Your alternative there is your Google Tag Manager, which is the same principle where we don't embed stuff directly on the website. We try and keep a cleaner separation of it. And Zaraz is a great. I think they bought that company out maybe last year or maybe 18 months ago, and they've evolved the service. But that's a great thing to use, definitely.
Yeah, this is one of the things I'm trying to sort out, as you know, Joel. So I've always used Google Tag. Well, I'd say always. The last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years or so, I've used Google Tag Manager for my Pixel, and I love it. It's super easy, and you can create some custom events with some built-in triggers and stuff. That said, it's really tempting to move over to Zaraz because I don't have to pay extra for the API, and the API, if I'm going to use the API gateway, is going to be like $100 a month. And is it really worth it? So I guess, what do you say to people like me who are set up with the Pixel on Google Tag Manager, but are using Cloudflare? Is it worth that type of transition to a Zaraz?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of factors. You've got some unique, very complex setups there, John, which are going to take a while to unpick. So, the reality is you're not going to make your $100 a month saving on that in a while. But it's an interesting experiment. I mean, your other angle you need to not worry about, to have on your radar, of course, is the whole transition to GA4. GA4 ties
Right.
very close. It ties very closely to GTM. So if you take GTM out of the loop and GA4 is very important to you, you probably don't want to do that. I know there are schools of thought which say you can't run GTM and Zaraz at the same time. I've never seen a problem. I think if you have a strategy for doing it and you test it, a lot of these things can just work out. But certainly GA4 looks even more embedded and direct with GTM. So
Yeah, that's something I think we're gonna have to talk about more offline because like my brain can't comprehend how they could both work at the same time because it's basically firing the pixel twice the way I see it. But neither here nor there. So you talked about mucking around on the site a bit. What are some of the biggest like I'm sure when you get a new client, you've probably seen some things as you jump into their mucked up websites for the first time. I mean, what are some common mistakes that we all make? I'm sure that I've made as well.
Well, WordPress is a blessing and a curse because we can get pixels, we can get plugins, and we can just throw them in there. The biggest mistakes are just sort of having too many plugins in there which are conflicting. WordPress is not updated. It's on poor quality hosting. We're not using things like Cloudflare. It's, as I say, it's a blessing rather than a curse because anyone can get a WordPress site up and running pretty quickly. But if we get involved with the project, one of the first things that we do, John, is a complete audit, just sort of, what state is this WordPress site in? Because partially because we've got to fireproof ourselves. Because if it's a complete mess, and we have come across sites which are an absolute nightmare, if you just change one thing and something else breaks, then who gets the finger pointed at it? So one of the things we'll do, we'll take a copy of the website, so we've got a local developed environment, and we'll clean it out as much as possible. Take away all the plugins which aren't used, because you'll find the clients installed things like, I don't know, Kissmetrics, or when that was around, or I don't know, Hotjar, and they may well not be using these things anymore, and they're all adding to a performance load. So there's a lot of clearing out. So certainly things like plugins and stuff like that, I would really urge people to have a look through what they got running on there and go through it with a fine-tooth comb, because those things are just holding the website back in terms of performance, and they are a security issue.
What makes it a security issue?
Updated. Well, some plugins not created in a very the code author will get the code out there as quickly as possible. Security tends to be the last thing that they put into the mix there. So the more code you add onto the website, the more untrusted code, it's going to be a bigger target, which then goes back to what I said earlier, John, about getting Cloudflare wrapped around it, so at least get some protection from that. But it's tricky. I mean, by all means, people can go in and audit the plugins, but like I mentioned earlier, people can embed scripts direct into the HTML if they ask the developer, or it might be in GTM. Sometimes if we get pulled onto a project and they want us to say change the Google Analytics code, we've got to spend a couple of hours working out where is this coming from, only to find it's in a tag manager or something like that. So it's and they don't know, John, because somebody who's now left the company did it on a whim on a Friday afternoon and they didn't document it. So they tend to be a Wild West, and they need a lot of structure and slow methodical thinking just to get it into a state where we can look after it. So I think certainly adding too many plugins is a normal crime. Normal crime, I would say, yeah.
Yeah, and look, I can understand why it happens. For example, like when I was starting my site, those early years, one of the things that I do, and I'm sure a lot of people do this, is like what are the ways I can make my site better and more powerful? So you'll Google, the best plugins that I need for my WordPress website, and you'll go down this list. I have all these links to all these various plugins. Like, oh, that's powerful. That's awesome. I got to do that too. We start adding them, and then the problem becomes, over the years, like you added all these plugins, and you get like you talk about auditing it. And I'm like, I know I added that plugin for a reason.
Yeah.
I don't remember why. And sometimes there's something that you created that relies on that plugin. And that's the one thing that I think about now. Well, first of all, I rarely add a plugin anymore because I know it'll freak you guys out. But one of the reasons is like I would use short codes from a plugin,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so, for an example, I think it was like the like a tweet later kind of plugin, a social
Yeah.
plugin where you would even craft what the message was that would go in a tweet, and I'd put it near the top, and you click that. It looked nice. You click on that, and it would open up a box to tweet this message and promote that blog post. It was kind of cool. But eventually, it was like, okay, this is just one extra plugin. Let's remove it. Well, the result was now I had this short code near the top of all these blog posts where I was adding it, and I wasn't adding it on every blog post.
No.
So it's things like that. Be like, before you add a plugin, will it require you to add short codes all over your website that you now have to chase down and remove because they're no longer going to work when you take that plugin off? And that's another thing too that we don't really think about at the time when we add it.
No, I mean, obviously, if the plugin was helpful, it might say I'm being used on these pages. But of course, it doesn't say that because it's going to play to the strengths of, look, if you don't know when I'm used, I'm probably going to stay active, which then works for its stats. Yeah, I mean, it's such a problem with these. With you got to bear in mind, of course, that all of these plugins then they need to be updated for the latest versions of WordPress, because all of a sudden we've got a critical path then of the more code we add in, the more it's just got to work out the box as WordPress gets updated, and it just doesn't work all the time. I mean, we see it a lot with WordPress, with WooCommerce websites. With WooCommerce is a huge plugin. It's got so many sub plugins that as WordPress gets updated, I don't know, shipping rules just break or something like that, and it's just the nature of the beast. And you could get cross about that, and you could get annoyed because it's going to take a developer to go in and fix it. But the reality is, John, that to build things like WooCommerce and the plugins from scratch is a massive project. So you just got to take the rough with the smooth. Look, I'm getting all of this functionality off the shelf, and sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes I need to get somebody to help with it. That's still a million times better than having to write that stuff from scratch.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the balance, right? That we have to figure out, because yes, every plugin we add, and some more than others, are going to slow down our website. They're going to add functionality to make it potentially better. In the meantime, it does add risk that you didn't have before. Yeah. So that's why, where possible, that's like, even when we talk about solutions for managing the pixel and the API, that's where possible, using something like Google Tag Manager or the Cloudflare Zaraz solution, where you're not throwing in another plugin that slows down the website. It's separate of that, is ideal. But there's a balance there as well, because plugins are so easy.
Yeah,
usually.
They're easy. I mean, you talk about mistakes people make. A lot of mistakes people make when they approach WordPress and plugins is that they think it's a magic bullet. But going back to the point I said earlier, where you're not developing the code. If you get plugins, look, you're going to have to play to the strengths of what that plugin does. You've got to live with the constraints of that plugin. You can't say, oh, well, I like that plugin, but I'd like it to do X, Y, and Z. Well, you're not going to do it unless you rewrite it. So if you're going to get things off the shelf prepackaged for a fraction of the cost that it takes to develop it, you've got to live with those constraints. So let's say you were creating a membership portal. Well, that is not going to work exactly as you want it to work. You're best off finding out what plugins are available and then working your requirements that way. So many clients who come to me sometimes with requirements, I've got to say, yeah, but you're going to have to play to the strengths of the client. If you want it exactly the way you want it, that's fine. We will create it bespoke, and it'll be 10 to 20 times plus more expensive than that. That quickly changes people's mind. I mean, I want people to have the solution that they want, but you've got to be realistic about it,
Cheers. You mentioned before that one of your favorite solutions is Cloudflare. Are there other tools or plugins? And we talk about plugins, but there's good plugins too that people that are great solutions that people should look into that will help the performance or add functionality that you find yourself adding regularly just because it's so great.
Oh, I wish I'd made a list, but I mean, I'm sure I'm going to miss things out, but I'll just give you a few ideas of something. For starters, depending on your hosting environment, because this is where it gets slightly tricky, you want a security plugin in there. You've got your iThings, you know, there's security in places like that. And security's got its own kind of version of Cloudflare. But certainly you want to get some kind of security plugin in there. And doing that, you probably want to work out how to configure it, because those things tend to be, you know, don't just install it, have a little think through it. Another plugin I can think of off the top of my head is Duo app, and they're owned by Cisco. And that's a two-factor authentication system where as you log in, it sends a blip to your phone and you just click yes or no. There's plenty of these two-factor systems where they can send a code and all that stuff, but this happens to be a very friendly, and this works really, really well. And two-factor authentication is such an important step for people with WordPress sites to take, because of course it means that hackers certainly need more than a username and password to gain entry to your website. So two-factor authentication, absolute killer. Another one I think we use, and probably it's more probably on John Newman, I like to use a documentation plugin, because because we would normally create a custom theme, like John Newman, you know, yours is a custom theme because your brand is unique. So I don't like to, we don't like to fill in the blanks with an off-the-shelf theme. Life's too short for that. I think you've got to create a more, where you can create a more polished theme. That then raises the issue that it's not always straightforward. Well, how do I update the social media links, or how do I do X, Y, and Z? So what we try and do is to embed documentation, probably like a screencast, within the back end of the website. So you or whoever, all the other clients, their admin teams can go in there and look and remind themselves how to do whatever is needed. That's a very good plugin. You've got to give a shout out to Yoast. I think sometimes people think it's a silver bullet and it massively improves the SEO. I don't think it's quite that case. It's got some great facilities, certainly even the free one. I like the fact that when you're in Yoast, you can play around with your slug and all that stuff, and you can see, and it'll give you a preview of how it'll look on Google search. I think that alone is a nice thing to have, although I wouldn't panic about it too much. I'll give a shout out to the Cloudflare plugin, because of course, I'm not getting paid by Cloudflare, by the way. I must say that 1,000 times. But it's. I wish I knew the name of this one as well, John. But there's a plugin. If you want me to get it for the show notes, that's fine. There's a plugin where you can add a custom column to say your pages and stuff like that. And you can put your unique notes in there. Like sometimes I found this on the Glass Mountains website. I would have a load of thank you pages for things like Stripe callbacks, and the name was just thank you or something like that. Well, I have no idea what that means. Whereas you could put it in this other meta field, and I would say event booking thank you or something like that. Right. So that and again, that's useful from a management point of view of looking after the website. But there's plenty of good plugins. I think when you install a plugin, make sure it looks like it's been updated recently. If it says it hasn't been updated in 2 years, I mean, come on. Don't just install that. That's just nuts.
Right. Cheers. Earlier, you touched on briefly Google Analytics in relationship to Google Tag Manager. So I've been getting this warning in my Google Analytics for the last year, Joel, about switching over to GA4. And I know we have it set up, or at least partially set up on my sites. What do people need to know about GA4? What do we got to do about it?
Well, okay, so there are a few things to know, of course, right? So Universal Analytics, the old version, is just stopping this year. The data processing is stopping. Is it July, something like that?
Yeah, it's July,
Yeah, July, which means that if you're relying on it now, have a backup plan in place. So the reason you've got GA4 running, even though we're not actively doing much with GA4, is that when we come to the 1st of July, you'll be able to run a year's worth of reports. Whereas, of course, if people suddenly switch over on the 1st of July, they will have no data. The reason they'll have no data is because Universal Analytics and GA4 are completely different beasts. They're built for a different time. Under the hood, Universal Analytics, I mean, that was Urchin software, which Google bought, wasn't it? Something along those lines. I think you used to see the Urchin word in the actual script. But irrespective, it was built for a different time, and we know those times have changed with privacy and iOS 13 and all that kind of thing. So that's one reason why we simply can't say, well, that's fine. Let's export all our session data out of Universal Analytics and put it in GA4. That is not going to fly. That doesn't work. You can export your data out of Universal Analytics, and you can put it into spreadsheets. You can put it into SQL query, so you can process it and stuff like that. But you're not putting it into GA4 because that's not how that system works. It's a completely different beast.
Yeah.
Probably created for the multi-touch world where we've got apps, where we've got websites, probably created more in light of the privacy-aware world that we live in, even though I wouldn't say out of the box it's GDPR and CCPA and all that kind of stuff compliant. It's certainly a different beast, but you want to, at the least, do kind of what we did with you. I mean, we did a little bit more, but you want to get GA4 up and running in some kind of fashion so it's tracking a bit of data for you.
Yeah, and look, it is a bit of an adjustment. If anyone's like me, who is kind of a creature of habit, and you have your routines, like I've used Google Universal Analytics every day for the last 11 years or whatever, 12 years, and it's not as simple as like, oh, it's like an upgrade, an update. Everything is a little different. Setting up the conversions is different. Yet it doesn't just automatically port over, I don't believe. Whatever, basically the goals that you had set up before, we're not using goals anymore.
It measures it differently, John. I mean,
Right.
everything's event based in GA4. I mean, page views are events. It's a different language in that sense. It thinks about things differently, which is why you just can't convert those things. But to be honest, John, I think that's an opportunity, because going back to the problems we have earlier when we inherit websites, things like Google Analytics tend to be a mess with fragments of goals which were working one time, which weren't changed, which aren't measured. So like anything, it's a good opportunity to go, hang on a minute, what are we trying to measure on this website, and what is the best way to go about that? So there is an opportunity. I'm going to be optimistic about it as well, okay?
And this is probably gonna end up being something we need to talk about offline, but like, so will Google Tag Manager and GA4 talk to one another, where every time I create a new event in Google Tag Manager, can we make that be an event in GA4? Or how is this going to work to make it as easy for me as possible?
We'll take that offline, but I think probably what we'll do some testing first, whether that's on a test website or a test GTM container. We've got a bit of time to get some of that stuff working, but yeah, a little bit of offline testing will help us there. But as I said earlier, GTM and GA4 go hand in hand, so we will be able to make it work even with your more complex setup.
So for anyone who hasn't flipped over yet, I mean, just starting the transition, are there any just initial things they need to do, be aware of, or any resources they should use to? Because I don't think it's all that easy, right?
Well, I think there's normally a wizard or something within Google Analytics to help set that up. Although I was speaking to Jan earlier, JJ. I was speaking to JJ
Inside
earlier.
joke. Yeah.
I was speaking to JJ earlier, and he was saying there was an out-of-the-box solution to set it up within Universal, but I think he was saying that just makes it kick in on the 1st of July, so that doesn't give you any retrospective data. So I'm not even I'm not sure if that really. I mean, don't get me wrong. That's better than having a window of lost data, but ideally you want to get. They call them streams now. I think within GA4, you want to get that tracking ASAP. Right. I mean, ideally it would have been from the 1st of July last year, so you'd have a year's worth of reports that you can do, and you will have that.
I'm panicking a little bit here as you talk about. The Google Analytics or the Universal Analytics will stop working, I assume, but we're not going to lose that historical data, are we?
No, but we probably want to download it or think about how you want to process it.
Because I've got lots and lots of years of data that I like to refer back to every once in a while. So I'm just curious.
No, so that'll be another project of it's not going to go away, the data, certainly not immediately, but it'll be worth, again, offline. Let's have a little sub project to see how you want to process that.
Bottoms up. The one thing that we've briefly discussed in the past, and I know everyone's talking about it, is AI.
Oh.
So if we can't get through a discussion without talking about it these days because it impacts everything. It impacts our websites. It impacts our marketing as well. So does it excite you? Does it scare you when you think about the possibilities with AI related to websites? I mean, what comes to mind for you?
It's a fascinating topic, isn't it? I mean, whenever
Yeah.
I played around with Chat GPT, have I got that right, John? You got it right.
Chat GPT, it's not Chat
Yeah.
GTP, which I've said many times, even though I do know which is right. It's just
Yeah.
doesn't slide off the tongue right. Yeah.
Whenever I played with it, I've been very impressed with how it goes. But you've got to bear in mind sometimes, we're treating it like a magic box, and I think if you want to see magic, you will see magic. Whereas
Mm.
if like anything, they get used to some of the queries and they know, I know it's almost too easy to think there's magic going on there. Whereas it's does it excite me? I I don't know. I mean, I see adverts popping up for AI will write your website copy. I just
Yeah.
it just depresses me a bit, John. I think all right, maybe that is the way forward, and maybe they can split test AI copy against human copy, and maybe the AI copy
Right.
against. But I think we lose something of our humanity by doing that. It's got its place, I'm sure. I mean, for split testing, for example, why not on a very high traffic website? People have been using systems to generate copy for years for
Right.
that kind of thing. If AI can help with that and create its own little feedback loop to improve it, brilliant. Whole websites written by AI, I don't know. It just completely depresses me. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Look, as someone who's spent 12 years writing about 1,200 blog posts, it definitely depresses me a little bit thinking that someone could throw that together in a day. You know,
Well, but
potentially.
how can it? I mean, let's say Meta changes. I mean, the whole Meta verified thing. GPT can't suddenly write the latest article on that, can it?
Well, ChatGPT. So to me, this is less about what AI and stuff like ChatGPT can do now, and
Yeah,
what it's going to do here within the next year, 2 years, 3 years. Because I think a lot of people misunderstand. Like when I talk about ChatGPT and AI and like excitement about it, or the possibilities with it, some people are quick to point out the weaknesses of its. Oh, but it just goes through 2021, or it gives
yeah,
you wrong answers, and that's yes,
yeah.
all this stuff is true. I'm not saying write your website with ChatGPT and AI today. I'm just saying the future is likely AI generated content because it's going to get better. So, but yeah, it is a battle for me personally because potentially someone could create a good website in a matter of minutes, maybe hours, days. That's similar to what I created in 12 years.
But but
But
but
yeah, go
Google,
ahead.
yeah, I mean Google know you created a website in 12 years. You've got authority, which a new website on AI generated content. You can't make that up overnight. I mean,
No,
they will have different factors, of course, but I mean, yeah,
as always.
you've got authority there.
Yeah, this is something again. I try to separate my creator brain and like my ego from you know this as a user consumer as well. So there's been a lot of talk about does it matter, should Google care whether something was AI generated? First of all, I think that becomes I'm not gonna call it a slippery slope, but like at what point is it AI generated, right?
But
You've got
yeah,
detectors. Is it 100% AI generated? We know it is. Do you have a few headlines, just a little bit of the text? It looks like it could be. That's going to be really tough to police,
oh my
honestly.
God, John, AI content detector. That sounds like an arms race, which is never going to happen.
No,
It's just gonna. Yeah, do not go down that route. I mean, it's just not going
right.
to happen either.
So at the end of the day, the only thing that Google and Bing and all the search engines and even users should care about is, was this piece of content more helpful to you, or was this content more helpful to you? And if it ends up being that the AI generated piece of content was more helpful to you than my content was, I lose. And I don't think that just because it was generated by AI that it should be dinged. If it is accurate, if it was well written, if it answers the person's question, I mean, how am I to argue with that?
And to go back to our point, John, I don't think they can ding it. I don't think
Yeah.
they will be able to tell. They won't be able to tell it's AI generated. All they'll be looking at is sort of, is it getting more clicks? Is it holding more attention?
And this is a long conversation by itself, but like, if everyone could create AI generated websites, that also raises the bar because all of a sudden everybody's website is the same. So what is it that separates your AI generated website from this other AI generated website? That's not going to be exactly worded the same and whatnot,
Yeah.
but how is it that you can add more value? So whether that's through being human as well, because I still think that ultimately as marketers, content marketers, creators, we can't ignore AI. We should use AI, leverage it to make us better at what we do, however that ends up coming about.
Yeah, how is it going to go? How we control the inputs to the AI we use has got to be key, isn't it? 'Cause, let's say you're an organization with brand, tone of voice, and values. We would want to feed that into the AI to create on-brand content. So how
Right.
we control the input, and maybe that's the direction of travel we've always seen, John, in terms of industrial revolution. Whereas instead of doing all the minor stuff, it goes up to the higher level where we can control the mass production of it.
Right.
That's where that's scary is sort of course, well, I don't know how that affects copywriters and AI as a general rule, how it affects a certain class of jobs. And if it ends up affecting websites, I don't know, that obviously affects companies like mine. So we can't be dismissive of it because it's frightening in
No.
terms of the disruption that's coming, because that disruption is coming whether we like it or not.
Yeah, and look, I don't want to be dismissive of the fact that it could impact copywriters in particular. And look, artists, we've been hearing that complain as well
Artists,
with
yeah.
AI generated. But I think it's important to remember, first of all, that with each new big innovation, I think the last time would probably be the internet, it's disruptive. It's disruptive of jobs. So if you were to go back and look at what jobs were like in 1990, like a marketing job in 1990, surely that are jobs that were performed then that either don't exist anymore
Yeah.
or exist very differently. If you completely ignore the internet, you probably don't have a job if you're in marketing, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. Like I don't say same thing, but a similar argument for me is that okay, how do you leverage the internet to make you better at your job? And the internet is also generating new jobs, looking for experts like you who are good with the internet and building websites and whatnot. Same kind of thing will come out of AI, in that
Totally.
it will change your job. Absolutely. If you try to keep doing the things the way you've always done them, you will probably be left behind in certain fields more than others. And it's going to create some new jobs too, because we're going to need those experts. So I totally get the pain and the fear. Look, it should be from anybody in our marketing field, honestly.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like you can embrace this and use it and be ahead of everybody else, or you can just be angry and scared about it and let everyone pass you by. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, you can't hold back the tide of it. So it's got to, as you get over that phase, sort of, how is it going to affect, and then be prepared for it. From my perspective, sort of over the years, we are seeing a decline in organic traffic as we got things like zero click results in Google. So we're almost seeing that world where Google are trying to sort of answer the questions direct on SERPs, which could be via voice or anything like that. But so maybe then where websites used to serve any query, maybe their reason changes slightly. It's to serve different types of query. It's to end up being the intellectual property showcase for knowledge makers. So it's a different kind of beast than it was before. I think people still need to own their property, but how websites, because that's how I look at the world moment, how websites will look in that kind of more AI world, I'm not quite sure yet. But I mean, I think you still definitely need a way. Well, who does know? Crystal ball. You still need to hold a method of explaining what your intellectual property is, because of course those are the things which are going to feed into AI ultimately. And I think we've kind of chatted on this before with things like zero clicks. There's always been a worry in SEO because people are being robbed of traffic. I would like to think under the surface with things like zero clicks, Google are going, look, we know that source website is very authoritative, so we're going to make sure their rankings are raised in some way because we know they're losing traffic on your zero click results. I would like to think the same logic makes sense if AI starts to answer more of those questions, because they have to be drawing on a knowledge base from somewhere.
Yeah, and that's kind of like the endless cycle that I've talked about before, that Google or whomever is still drawing from web generated content. If all of a sudden there's no referral traffic and websites are losing traffic, they may be less motivated to create their own content, which is what feeds that engine in the first place. And it's all kind of a mess. But you're right that we've kind of been headed in this direction for a while, and it is a bit of a lesson, right? So it's a lesson that I didn't really heed because it felt like I was just going to always get 5 to 10,000 referrals from Google every single day for forever, Joel. And over the last few years, or a couple of years especially, it's dropped down to 1,000. And look, there are lots of reasons behind that. Some of it that's probably self-inflicted, and I'd love to see some overall stats, like globally, how referrals have been impacted. But it's true, the zero-click stuff has been bringing us down this path. So we need to be prepared for, okay, what happens if I end up losing another 1,000 clicks per day? How do I replace that? What do I do? Does it matter? I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I mean, ultimately, your long form, well-researched, important content, it's about getting people to that content. The content's fantastic. And I wouldn't want to stop people like you succeeding, because that doesn't make sense to them as well, because that bites the hand that feeds it, that they don't have data to embed then. So this isn't a problem, I don't think you think in isolation, but how does it work? I don't know. I think it goes back to the point that you made earlier, sort of, well, we need to look at new ways of doing it. I mean, I know you're doing a lot on TikTok now, thinking about what is the face of my business now? How do I take it to new battlegrounds,
Yeah, it truly is looking at things a little bit differently, that in the past, anyone who was kind of analytically focused like I am, video didn't make a lot of sense, because you can't track, okay, somebody watched this video, and then because they've been watching all these videos over time, they went and go on my website and they signed up for something. There's just no tracking for that. So as a result, like why would I do that? I can't track that. I can't prove that it works. But the reality is that that's really kind of where we need to be, especially if our website's not going to be getting that traffic that we're used to.
Last call. The only constant is change, John.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have anything left in your glass there?
No, I got a tiny drop. I might pull myself up in a minute.
I've asked the bartender for our tab, so hold on.
Okay, we better sort of finish up. Tiny drop left. That's good.
Well, thanks for joining me again for the first time here, Joel.
No, that's fascinating.
Always fascinating talking to you. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Oh, okay. So if you go to www.glassmountains.co.uk, you will spot some of our smiley faces on the front of the website. And yeah, if you got any problems with your WordPress site, you need some ongoing support, we can certainly help you.
And where do they go for guitar tips?
Oh, wow. I wouldn't say go to guitar. I am a fairly mediocre guitar player and an even worse singer. But because I wanted to find out about TikTok, I thought I need a single purpose to focus on there. Otherwise, I'm just doing the same on Facebook and Instagram. I didn't want to do that. So I got one of my guitars. I got a few guitars. And that's been my focus of doing it. And I tell you what, it's been wonderful, because you find a tribe of people who are doing the same as you. They're not fantastic on guitar or singing, and you start you start sharing and talking. I mean, it's small things, John. Like I've come across songs which are really good on acoustic guitar, which I've never heard of before. So that's been fun, and it's been a really good vehicle for finding out about TikTok, which is a fascinating platform. It's really interesting. But yeah, I'm on the Joel Hughes. So if you want to see songs played, I wouldn't say fantastically, between 0 and 10, let's go for about a 3. But it's good fun. I'm enjoying it, and I'm finding out about the platform.
I mean, honestly, I see it as a really good lesson for how to jump into short form video. Like you've got something to share. You don't have to be a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10 on something, but it's something that you are passionate about, whether you're talking about it, performing it, whatever it is. There are other people like you who are going to care about that. So, and it gives you infinite amount of content, right? Possibilities.
Well, I mean, it's fun, John, but it kind of goes back. I think you're very good at this. You're very good at going, well, I'm going to have a go at this, and I'm going to set myself a challenge of 100 days. I'm going to do that. Or, whatever it is, you've always been good at that. And I remember starting this year thinking, do you know what? I want to learn a bit more of the guitar and stuff like that. So I thought, I'm going to put myself out there doing it on TikTok, even though you're opening yourself up to criticism, you're opening yourselves up to anything that can happen. But there's an element where you just kind of have to, you got to get over yourself sometimes, and you've got to sort of put yourself out there to get up to that next level. Because I know even with that, with my one TikTok for the guitar, how I think about my business and how my brain works creatively, it will it will generate ideas which I might be able to use for God's mountain. So it's all about, I mean, it's a creative endeavor which you don't know what else is going to fuel, I think.
Man, that's a whole other topic we could explore. I'm telling you, just creating the content itself spurs new ideas. It absolutely does. And it, for me, I've seen it. Creating the videos gives me new podcast ideas. It gives me new blog post ideas. It gives, like, everything benefits. Training ideas, because now I'm working on a training for short form video.
Yeah.
Amazing enough. So yeah, it's true. Well, thanks so much again, my friend Joel, for joining today. We've got to bring you back sometime. You'll have to get the tab next time, though.
I certainly will. I'm sure we're not going to be short of topics to talk about as well. And I'll bring. Now you've set the bar for the fancy beer. I'm going to have a different fancy beer.
It's not particularly fancy, though. It really isn't.
That was a fancy can. That was really dandy. That was. I like that.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. If you have any questions, want to share your feedback, let me know. info@johnloomer.com. Make sure you leave a review, subscribe, do whatever, wherever you listen or watch. It's like everywhere now. So thanks again. Until next time, do awesome things. I'm out.